everyone, so I am working on an upcoming tote bag tutorial and I felt like I needed to make a quick separate video showing how I accurately cut my pieces using 2 rulers. I was not actually planning on making this video, but I felt like it was something that maybe might be helpful to some people out there. And this is how I cut all of my fabric for projects like tote bags and drawstring bags, different things like that that don't have paper patterns to use. To start out, you will need a couple of different rulers. I definitely prefer the clear acrylic rulers because they have the grid lines that are much easier to line up with your fabric than a typical like school type ruler. And I definitely recommend getting one that is 24 inches long. And then for your second one, it really depends on the size of projects that you're working on. If you're doing some larger size tote bags, go ahead and get another 24-inch ruler. If you like to do more smaller projects, a 12-inch ruler will probably be enough for you. I have 2 24-inch rulers and 1 12-inch ruler that I kind of just trade around and use depending on what project I'm working on. You will also need a Rotary safe cutting mat, a rotary cutter, and then I strongly recommend getting a Rotary safe glove for the hand that you're using to hold down your ruler while you cut. Last year I actually had an accident. I wasn't wearing my glove and I ended up in the emergency room because of it. So learn from my mistakes, use safety precautions and all of that. All the rulers, rotary cutter, glove, everything that I love using will be linked in the description box down below if you're looking for like some brand recommendations and all of that. I'll also link to the video where I talk all about my trip to the emergency room. I have started by making sure my fabric is folded in half so the selvages line up. It is very important to start with a nice straight edge. So line up one of the lines on the ruler with the fold of the fabric and another line on the selvage on the other end and trim off the cut edge so it's nice and even. For this project, I have 2 pocket pieces in different sizes cut from the same fabric. Instead of cutting the pieces one at a time from the fabric, it is quicker and easier and more accurate to cut strips from the fabric and then subcut those down to the right size. I went with a taller pocket measurement and used 1 ruler to measure that distance from the cut edge and butted the longer ruler up to it. The longer ruler needs to also line up with the folded and selvage edges so it's straight across the fabric. Slide the smaller ruler to check in a few places that the entire strip is the same correct measurement. Then move the smaller ruler away and use the larger ruler as the one you run the rotary cutter against to make your cut. Now that the strip is cut, I trim off the selvage edges. If I were cutting the bag outer pieces that need to be the same size, I would leave the fabric folded and cut through both layers at once. But I'm cutting the pockets, so I opened the fabric and measured the width of the taller pocket with 1 ruler while butting the second ruler up to the end. Then trim. I repeat for the smaller pocket, trimming it to the correct width. Then, since it did need to be a little shorter, I rotate and trim away the excess height. This leaves me with the exact size pieces I needed with very little waste, and the remainder of my fabric has nice, clean cut edges ready for the next use. The next fabric was used for 2 same size pieces and 2 straps. The straps are cut all the way across the fabric, then trimmed to the correct length later. The other pieces have the selvages cut off the end, and the exact width needed is measured in from the newly cut edge. In this case, I needed 19 inches. So I put that number of the ruler on the cut edge to measure and trim with the help of the second ruler. And by the way, before anyone asks, I never use the rulers on the cutting mat, like the grid lines on the cutting mat, as a guide for where to cut. They aren't as accurate. Your cutting board can warp over time, which makes them even less accurate, and they're under your fabric instead of being on top like a ruler. A ruler is on top, holding down your fabric so you know it is completely accurate. And so yeah, just don't rely on your cutting board unless you absolutely have to and your cutting fabric's so big that you just don't have a ruler large enough to do it. The more you practice at this method using 2 rulers, the easier it gets and the quicker you'll be at it. And then one more quick tip. when you're using the ruler to cut against, make sure to press down really firmly so that the ruler isn't sliding around as you go, giving you a wobbly cut. If it's a pretty long piece that you're cutting, it is totally okay to cut half of it while you're pressing down firmly, and then carefully lift your hand and move it forward, and then cut the rest of the fabric, as long as the ruler doesn't move in between there. If it does happen to move, just make sure to carefully line it up with all the same markings that you had it lined up before, and it will be fine. But yeah, pressing down firmly on the ruler is definitely really important, and goes right along with getting those nice, even, accurate cuts. I hope that seeing this and hearing all of my tips is helpful for you on some of your future projects. If it is helpful, make sure to hit that like button down below, and come back soon for my tote bag tutorial that I was working on when I was cutting all of the fabrics shown in the video. And until next time, happy sewing.